No, you can revive it.
Here I go. It's back.
Bad. Oh wait, it's like over. Like this is a new link.
Oh wait, so it's going to appear like the people who are watching it, they're going to have a dead stream.
Yeah.
Well, nice talking with you guys. I'm going to go to a chess tournament. I'll be back in like 2-3 hours if you guys are streaming all night.
All right, well, I guess that's that then. Awesome.
Shoot.
Well, I could keep streaming. Like, it's ready right now.
Well, I got to
go for a little longer, but
I have to get to a rehearsal, so I'm out.
If you're still talking later, I'll rejoin you.
Wait, Doovovid, can I ask you a quick question? It's like yes or no.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Do you believe that a rabbi in Prague made a golem? I'm not being sarcastic.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion on that doesn't matter. The Maharal of Prague, he was a great Kabbalist. Like, if there is such a thing, it's possible. This Maharal of Prague is probably the likely to have done it, but I don't know. Like, I'm just going to say no comment on it, because I like to believe in miracles and the powers of the rabbis. I'm logical and a scientist, and I don't have any evidence. I mean, the legend continues till today. It's popular among Polish goyim also. I like to think Kabbalistically maybe something like that is possible as a believer. Or maybe my roommate has a better comment than me.
Well, I appreciate your comments. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, do you believe in stuff like that?
And do I believe in real golems?
Well, I said no comment because I would like to believe, although as someone who's trained in science, I'm highly skeptical, and I don't have any. I mean, there's something.
The golem thing is essentially like the same thing as like a homunculus or something, right?
Yeah, except it's through Jewish legend of using the Shem Hashem and
made a clay
model and putting it to life, and then that.
Yeah,
I community.
I don't think anything like that is anything besides allegorical. I do think that like you can kind of like magically charge statues with intention, and like who's to say whether that has some like ripple effect in the real world in like causality. Like there's all sorts of weird stories about that and voodoo and all sorts of things.
I'm a believer in the Kabbalist that I would leave it open to be possible. I wouldn't say impossible.
Well, okay. Look. Well, the whole thing with Kabbalism is like, I mean, so much of it is allegorical. So like when you say like something happened, it doesn't necessarily mean it happened in the way that we understand. It's a mystical interpretation of events. So it's like it's to say to bring something to life might not literally mean it like got up and walked around and talked to people. You imbue.
What you're saying, although I would like to leave room to believe the story is possible as is, although it's highly unlikely. I would like to leave room that it's possible that the Maharal of Prague did turn this clay figure into a being that protected the Jewish community. Although it's highly unlikely, I wouldn't completely discount that it's possible as
right. But like okay, you look at like Thai black magic and stuff like that, and they have like they have fetishes and talismans and statues that they say that certain shamans can embed like the soul of a deceased child into this statue, and they keep it in their house, and like families all throughout Thailand do this practice and say that like they feel the presence of their child. I mean, there's all sorts of ritualistic practice like that where what we understand to be like causal reality is challenged, and like there might be some validity to those experiences. I mean, there's definitely validity to the experience, and it begs into question, the nature of reality itself, and like how, and like what our empirical understanding of the world, like how sufficient that really is, and it also brings into question like language and definitions of things. Like, what do you mean by, you know,
I just in the Barbell joined in the chat. We were talking about her earlier and saying how it might be a good idea to make a Gewalt-right satire like Bats is doing. So if she wants to join the chat, I'm not sure if she joins chats or just makes satire.
I gotta check out some of these videos. I've never seen any of them.
Yeah, if you're there, Bats, and you want to take the link, Blue has it in the Hangout. So if you want to discuss your satires and possibly teaming up for some Gewalt-right satires, please take the link and join us. We're a lot of us are fans of your work.
Hey guys, I'm stepping into a rehearsal, so I have to split.
All right, peace out.
Take care.
Later, man.
It's always nice to be on the panel.
Well. If it isn't Pilleater, welcome to the show,
Hi, guys.
Pilleater. Pleasure to have you.
I feel like I missed Pilleater. Like I left the Leucosphere after this person joined. Maybe not. I don't know.
Is this like the Blue Lizard show? The Blue Lizard show?
Yeah, this is the Blue Lizard Show. That's what I'm going to name this.
No, it's interesting though. I was just listening. It's like as I was in the shower, and then I just clicked the link. So
yeah, what's on your mind? You've been making some fascinating videos lately. I really like those PowerPoint style ones.
Yeah, about that. I mean, actually, I just saw Creed 2 with my family and my girlfriend. We just got out, and I'm just back at home. And I don't know. I've just been making a video every day, and I was going to finish another video tonight, tomorrow, and just do that, you know, until Christmas Day while working. So all that jazz and stuff like that.
Sounds nice. How's the music been going? Steven Universe.
Well, the guy that just left, Doovid's roommate, right? Is he like rehearsal? Like he's in a band or something?
I believe so. I think he's in several musical projects.
Yeah, I'm always curious about Doovid's roommate because like Doovid's roommate he always sends a text back to me like if I say something musical, Pilleater, Doovid roommate get back to me. No, it's just really weird. There's a Doovid and a Doovid roommate. I don't know why they're two all.
He just chose because I have a roommate that appears in my streams occasionally, like making noise. But he just chose that. I mean, he's been streaming a long time, well before I ever came to these circles, and he had previous births before, and I don't mind him choosing that handle. It's kind of funny. He's an interesting character. He's got an eclectic interest base and talent base, but also part of these alt-right politics. And so he could avoid the politics. If you're into common interest with him, he could just talk with you about music, irregardless of politics.
Is he in Detroit with you too?
No, I've never met him in real life. He just chose the handle Doovid's roommate. He said he's in Tennessee. He's from New York. We know common people. We
really close by.
Play Jewish geography and kind of know who each other are. But as far as I know, we never met in real life. And now he's in Tennessee.
It's so weird because like a year ago, I was with Harlan Dennison hanging out in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And that's the place where like Mitski was. And then he was talking to me about Mitski, like in just the chats. I always keep asking about that. And then he dodges the question. But it's just like, I don't know. I'm just saying maybe we were spiritually close to one another in that same proximity. And now, I don't know, he's just over there. But yeah, I'm outside of Jersey right now. I'm in Philadelphia, so.
I'm kind of cool with him using that. I think he just did it like he had always been an anonymous, streamer, and for whatever reason, he just decided to make like a joke account, Doovid's roommate, because I had noise in the background. But it turned out pretty funny, and he got a reputation with it, so he stuck with it for quite a few months. And like I don't mind, he's a good guy. But no, we're not actually roommates. We're not. We don't know each other in real life.
Yeah. But Blue Lizard was asking me about videos I was making, and I did a video yesterday about this one killer named Randy Stair, and I was just thinking about him all yesterday.
Dude, please give me all your thoughts on that, like all that you're willing to like speak about right now, because I thought that was a very interesting video. And I actually just recently, I can't go too much into the details, but I just recently passed through Pennsylvania. And there is a certain Pennsylvania and even some parts of like North Maryland, there is very much a sort of ugh. Like, I've been to a Weiss Market. Okay, they have one in the sort of North Maryland,
in like
Pennsylvania area, and it's like, Jesus. Like, compared to the people who work at, let's say, Walmart or Trader Joe's or Whole Foods, let alone, but compared to like literally Weiss Market employees, I was like, geez, like the physiognomy of these people is just like dreadful. It's like it was just such a gloomy, miserable place. It was tragic.
Oh yeah,
inside the dimly lit Weiss Market, like the bluish, gross lighting and the linoleum flooring. It was just the most awful place. So that really resonated with me.
Everything above Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, you're pretty much going to die in Pennsylvania. It's just a well-known. I mean, It's weird because during Donald Trump's election, they said Pennsylvania was the breakaway state. But it's really important to understand that only Philadelphia was like the Clinton voting section of Pennsylvania, and everybody else voted Trump. And it just shows you how much there's an imbalance, or that there is this kind of economy that doesn't work well in Pennsylvania. Half of it is Kentucky, and then one sliver of it is like a New York City, Portland, Oregon wannabe. And so it's very strange, but exactly right. Like, I don't even know the Weiss Markets. We have Wawas around the corner, but
avoid them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something about the nature, because I grew up, I went to a community college out where Randy Stair was. It wasn't his community college, but it was out in Bluebell or Coatesville. It's just like there's nothing. It's like you could be stuck there, and it's just grassland. It's near Mount Pocono. Most people in Mount Pocono just go to NYC because it's closer. But it's like, if you're in that sliver in between, it takes you 3 hours to get into NYC or 3 hours to Philadelphia. So you're really trapped there. But it just makes the cultural anthropology of the place. It's just very strange.
Talk a bit more about the Randy Stair situation. What have you been thinking about that lately? What motivated you to make the video? Give me the meta.
Well, okay, so... Well, I usually watch Mr. Metacore videos, and I just did a video previously about, queer people and queer theory, and that's just something I'm interested in. And it's about, different individuals, right? And so Mr. Metacore, he's kind of like Encyclopedia Dramatica, where he goes online and he shames people. And then I came across the thumbnail, like the splash image of like, oh, the Danny Phantom shooter. I remember his name last year, and it was really close by. It's only 3 hours to where I live in Dallas, Pennsylvania. And he just killed a person or something. And then when Mr. Metacore did it, he was like, no, Randy Stair, fuck Randy Stair. He represents everything bad about Tumblr and SJWism. He's exactly what nerds are going to do. They just want to kill people. But then it's like, when I looked into it, his life was really tragic. And that Randy Stair's life was kind of like, I don't want to say Yukio Mishima, but this 24-year-old that just like kind of just hated life. He didn't have a future. It's like the suffering of young Werther, I guess, on Goethe terms. And I just kind of looked into it, and he left a lot of art when he died. I mean, people go and they shame him online on his archived videos, but it's like, okay, the only people he killed was a 26-year-old mother who's not a college graduate, and 2 older guys, right? And he really just hated Pennsylvania in return. And it's just very much just looking inwards. And maybe I was actually watching a Randy Stair video a couple of hours ago and just looking at him and his suffering. And maybe that's my fascination with it. I'm still looking at it. Hi, Brundlefly.
Hey, everybody.
It's Brundle.
Yeah, hey, Babs, this reflecting on the Brundlecast series is really stoking my ego in a serious way.
Yeah, I'm glad it feels that way. I'm just for me, it's just like I'm lamenting the last vestiges of the sort of like it's like the last taste of a delicious food as it slips off your palate into your stomach.
Well, I really I appreciate that. I mean, obviously it's not just me. It's sort of the whole thing that we sort of collectively represent. The Luke Ford whack pack and everything. And I too lament its passing or slumber. I guess it's in a dormant state. But yeah, freaking Judas is hilarious. Judas wants me to dox myself so I can become some sort of pseudo messiah. which is interesting. but yeah.
Or like I was saying earlier, where you're actually most of the Gavalt writes only white friend. Like all of us in like this white movement, and we look like, do you actually have any white friends? And every one of us is like, yeah, Brundle's our friend.
What do you?
Well, right. I'm enabling the subversion, right? So you're able to point to me and be like, look, Brundlefly gives me legitimacy. Meanwhile, I get timed out the moment I open my mouth in any like real 1488 chat box. So
wait, Brundle, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So there was a period of time where it looked from my perspective that your channel was kind of like there was no content listed. Is your old content erased, or has it been put back up from?
It's unlisted. If you join the Brundlecast Discord, you can access it all.
Oh,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Basically, I think any of these good boys can get you a link. Or we're friends on Twitter. Just send me a DM and I'll send you the Discord.
Right. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for joining, Doovid. Always a pleasure. I'm loving the raincoat.
I got to run too. I'm about to be back home.
Little.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Real quick, Pat Little. So Pat Little wants to do an interview. He just emailed me. I don't know. I guess I'll just pit him against Doovid if Doovid wants to do that.
Ultimate Blood Sports, Brundlefly's wife versus Pat Little.
Doovid, you better wait. Who's debating? Who's debating Pat Little?
Brundlefly's wife is debating Pat Little.
Okay, take care, everyone. See you in a few hours. Hope you're still streaming. Good conversations.
All right, take care, Doovid and Brundle. Do you have any last thoughts? You thinking of having him on? Have him debate Doovid. Have him debate your wife. What are you gonna do?
I'm gonna probably have him talk to Doovid. I think that'll be interesting.
I hope Doovid has good counter arguments because they are there, but I don't think I said this earlier. I don't think a lot of Jews utilize any good counter arguments in these streams.
Well, I guess depending on I would have any Jew on that wants to do, or really anybody that's got anything to pick with Pat.
Well,
I think Doovid has shown himself to be willing to do battle with all these people, and also part of the foundation of Doovid and I's working relationship is that I provide him opportunities to debate those he wishes to debate. So he sort of got first dibs.
I totally support that. I just made a comment earlier in this stream that there are some times I've noticed that they'll have a Jewish person on one of these type of streams, and rather than actually really try to hammer at the person they're debating with who's anti-Jewish, they'll try to like compromise with them, like almost like make friends with them to win them over. And it just, I don't know. I think that's like with someone like Pat Little, it's just not going to work. It's a dumb idea.
I think it works. Well, depending how you look at it, I think it can work tactically with the audience. I mean, it's not about convincing the person you're talking to. It's about convincing the audience.
That's okay. Fair enough. I mean, maybe I don't know your current audience well enough, so fair enough. I haven't watched in a while.
My audience is enormous. It's huge.
Yeah, Brundlefly, do you have any reflections that you'd like to give? Now, I think, like, what, is it a week on after the Brundle class? After the Brundle class? Like, give your their thoughts, yeah.
Well,
Withdrawal?
I was going to say, I miss it tremendously. I'm also, it was exhausting. It's good that it comes sporadically. I mean, I think it'll be awesome when it comes back. And I think we can all look forward to that.
Wait! I just have one more question for Brundle. So, did you ever have Doovid and Richard Spencer on together?
Yeah.
Did they debate or did they interact at all?
Lightly.
Richard was like "fuck off" or something to him, right? Wasn't he?
Well, that happened the first time. They've been on 2 times together since. But it was sort of next to each other. They weren't really. I haven't been able, but Mike Enoch wants to do a direct debate with Doovid, so that's what's up next.
That must happen.
Wow. Well, I hope Doovid has some pretty aggressive counter arguments for whatever Mike's going to throw at him.
I think you're going to be disappointed.
How about it? Hey, Brundle.
Yeah, Glib.
How about Doovid and that Brown kid?
Who? Oh
The
my
one,
gosh, say some truth for the sway.
No, Brown. Kenneth
Oh,
Brown.
Ken Brown. I want to do that. Ken Brown. I tried that 5 months ago. Ken Brown doesn't want to talk to Jews.
Now, when did you find out about Kenneth Brown?
Butterfly sent him to me like 6 months ago.
Ah, look at that. Hey, Doovid's gone already, huh? I wanted to ask him about whether he's heard any of Kenneth Brown.
But look, guys, we'll talk. I pulled up to the house, and my wife's probably wondering why I'm sitting in the driveway. So I gotta rock and roll, but I'll be listening in. Okay.
All right.
Thanks for joining, Brundle. All right. So, Pilleater, you were in the middle of talking about Randy Stair and the Weiss market. Glib, unless you had anything to say, floor is yours, pal.
I'm all ears.
No, I mean, I just what I've been doing the past week is, I don't know if you know about this, but Robert Stark is doing Weekly Stark Sunday, and anybody is invited to go on. You just got to contact Matt Pist or Robert Stark on Facebook, and the channel only has 50 subs, but the ideal is to make the Stark Truth every Sunday, and right now the lineup is just Robert, Matt, Harlan Dennison, Brandon, me, maybe Cartrell when he's available, but just some things where we're just trying to kind of do what Luke Ford does, but it's just Robert Stark and Matt doing the thing. And I guess it's more discussions about lowbrow but high dialogue. Like, if we might be talking about the Lugs and the Atari, and that was one of the themes Matt was bringing up. So we might talk about that tomorrow. But just think, but maybe I would just do try to just churn out 5 PowerPoint slides a week, and just until I have a thought, make a public journal online, and just keep churning it out until something happens. Just even viewing gay pornography, it gets 100 views. So
Interesting. I'm there are a lot of questions I have to ask you, but I guess I'll sort of there's one broad question that I'd like to ask, and you probably, if you gave your full answer, it would probably take ages, but so I don't want to take too much of your time. But just broadly, first of all, the Stark Truth, I would love to see that revived. I was a big Stark Truth listener around the time that I first found Luke Ford, probably 4 years ago or something like that. And that was when I was sort of following sort of the tail end of NRX as well. I want to know what your thoughts are on this kind of divide that I tend to see in, I guess I'll just say I'll just describe as the right, for lack of a better term, or just sort of reactionary movements of all sorts, where there tend to be two broad different types of, I guess, kind of rough neural archetypes, for lack of a better term. You have the type of person who's relatively closed off to new experiences, who, it's really sort of the traditional conservative type, like low trait openness, and then you have the sort of more libertine, kind of edgy, transgressive type. And fundamentally, although these two people will often, link arms side by side, these two kind of types can often prove to be as different as night and day. And I think that you kind of, you know the phenomenon I'm talking about, right? And I just think it's really interesting to see this increasingly playing out. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I exactly. I don't mean to sound like a pessimist, but right now the scene is, we're all stuck on YouTube for some reason, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, YouTube live stream seems to be the hotness, right? It's kind of hard to imagine it, but it's at the same time, we all get censored for hate speech on YouTube. I just got cleared I'm now hate-free now on YouTube, and it makes me think I'm some kind of merchant trying to make politically correct James Alsop anti-liberal videos now, and now I'm thinking about how I can be PragerU, and it's very strange. I still watch Luke Ford. I don't care if Luke Ford's bashing on the alt-right. Luke Ford does what he does. I like his wisdom. But at the same time, it's really hard to imagine that the JF program which is airing on right now. I was listening to it before I was taking a shower. It's just became the Richard Spencer tabloid weekly show, where we want to know what Richard Spencer is doing with his girlfriend, what calamities he's up to, and just kind of the feeling of the person's right there next to you. I only met Spencer 4 times, but it's not enough to say he's brother or something. But again, it shows you that the celebrity type is there, but again, you were asking about the two different types of people on the alt-right, and I think it's also last year when we saw the Krot versus Ryan Folk battle, where a lot of the YouTube skeptics actually discovered the alt-right, and they were kind of mad at it, trying to debunk race realism. But the irony is it just makes you look like a pretentious centrist with a bunch of, again, talking high but discussing lowbrow ideals. And so I think what I'm trying to look for is this kind of route where we can talk about right-wing things, but then again, we get stuck in this image of being the poster boy of Hollywood Nazism, which Metapedia warned about literally 10 years ago. And that seems to be happening again. And I still stand by Greg Johnson's side that it seems to be that really countercurrent seems to be the last stronghold of any intellectual thought and excitingness. But at the same time, you know, even on countercurrent, the Alternative Right book, you have to move on from that. You know, you can't just be stuck in a right-wing ghetto. And you can have anti-liberal thought. You just have to explore avenues of new art. It may not get people viewing your stuff, but at least you can try to find different directions, whether it is from music through art. And yeah, I mean, if you're just asking about the divide, I think the divide is really about where the direction is going. Do we just, you know, get laid back, smoke a cigarette, and watch Mike Enoch fight Doooovid, or do we do something different? And then all of a sudden, the next Nick Fuentes out of nowhere does something extremely or is it just this big, you know, regressive mess, you know? But yeah, things like that. I mean, I don't know what I'm gonna say if Doovid's gonna argue with Patrick Little. I have no idea what that.
I mean, we know what's going to happen, basically. Patrick's Little going to say Jews are bad because X, Y, and Z, and Doovid's going to say Jews are good because X, Y, and Z. And based on the preconceived sort of moral scripts that people have written in their heads, in that particular audience, people are going to go along with the Pat Little interpretation. And since Doovid had already ceded that, yes, all the things that Pat Little is saying is, well, yeah, basically, I mean, one could see it like that happening. Effectively, Pat Little is going to come out of the debate, quote unquote, winning. Although Doovid, of course, to him, will probably think he is the one who came out of it as the victor. That's my interpretation of what's going to happen.
I always feel like I was too late to be on the Andy Worski show when it was big. Because if you think about it, Andy Worski is basically like the Springer show of YouTube, where literally in the same room you have Krot, Elinda, whatever, some other weird YouTubers all having drama about Discord. And I just feel like in a way where to get popular on YouTube now is to be the biggest trash TV, like I actually authentically mean it low-cal person. But at the same time, people want to believe it and it's sincere. And so, again, I'm not saying Andy Worski has any relevance anymore. I thought, you know, I'm that type of person that almost will say Worski was a plant, but I don't know. I think a lot of things are plants. I'm not saying it in a crazy schizophrenic way. I'm just saying it in a metaphorical, artistic way where, you know, as much as Discords I'm connected with, I actually just came on the Krot and T Discord just to see what everyone's up, and it really opens yourself to a new world of different types of people. And all of a sudden I came on there and I was talking and this guy wanted a podcast, but I guess it never happened because he Googled my name and saw racism rated around with it. But I guess the point is that today you really have to, like, it's not even about being a Jared Taylor intellect anymore. It's about being like a shitstormer with an Encyclopedia Dramatica article about yourself and then just causing all this trauma. Right? I don't know.
Interesting take. I'm curious, what of what you say right now do you think going on is genuine versus shock art, sort of shock material, shock content, etc.? And to what degree do you think people are legitimate about that sort of type of rhetoric?
Well, I mean, Matt Forney is, like, for some odd reason wants to attack Jim Goad because I think Forney has some anger with Goad because of the whole weird Scherzinger stuff. But I mean, not to say bad things about Forney, but if he's starting cocaine with Scherzinger, then it's like, well, why do you have to bring that up in public? And, you know, it just seems like everything's really personal, like a petty rat game. So it's okay to have idols like Little Pump, 6ix9ine, and Little Xan and have idols like Richard Spencer and Greg Johnson and put them in the same category, because it's very, I guess, intersectional with the whole rap drama thing. I just feel like what's the sincere people left? I mean, again, this is where you have the new Republicans, but these new Republicans are race realists. I was just watching PragerU a few days ago, and they have that Will kid, and he's all like, hey, immigration is destroying Europe. It's destroying its characters and what made Europe great. And it's like, well, you know, it's hilarious. Back in the 90s, this would be considered neo-Nazi stuff in the postmodernist school. And now it's considered a norm. So if anything, I guess culture has changed, that people are more anti-liberal. It's just that I think when you win something, and when the alt-right won its meta-political game, it just became the normative culture, and now normative culture is disgusting, and there's no vanguard of elitism or vanguard for the dainty artist in higher academia. I think the next step right now is being a sincere person and actually taking this art we see on the internet and what's happening in the media, and then try to happen in academia, because there's way too much hatred for higher academia, and it's usually because it's the white middle class that can't afford such a degree. But the irony is they certainly will borrow a loan to get the degree. So anyway, I'm not saying that the new person should be like a stupid lower class kid who has a master's from a state school and say, I'm different from the left because I'm anti-liberal. No, you have to become a dainty liberal that lives in NYC or California and start having anti-liberal views. Kind of, if you imagine like a countercurrents version of the New Yorker, I would be in favor of that.
Well, I think something like that personally would mesh very well for me too, as well as Doovid's roommate and possibly even Glib Medley. Now, Levi, on the other hand, is someone who I generally look towards being sort of the mental archetype of the kind of like more typical like capital C conservative archetype, rather than the more sort of like transgressive kind of type. And I'm not saying that in an insulting way to either group, but it's just sort of psychological differences. Do you see what I'm saying, Levi?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and I basically agree. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, and so Levi, I think, is more similar to the. I mean, I don't know, and I mean, Pilleater, I actually just, if you could just rant about like just for a little bit about like gender, like masculine, like feminine men, basically. What do you think makes a feminine man? What do you think the role of like feminine men, as it were, should be in society? And I'm just curious because you have a lot of interesting thoughts on the topic, or like the ideas of masculinity, etc. What is feminine and masculine?
I think one time you and Luke Ford wanted me to come on the Luke Ford show, but I was out dating it with my girlfriend, and I got that Google Hangout link, and I think you wanted to talk to make some transgressive about homosexuality or something, but I wasn't. But you know, a year ago, I wrote an article titled, you know, "The Proud Beta Male," and I think I should do a revise about it, because maybe it's just how poor I written it back then, but it was a way to get my notes on paper, or maybe I should just do a screencast about it. But when I talk about feminine men, I'm not saying a femboy or traps are gay or some gay guy who's right-wing, or just people assume soy boy betas, you know, with the cuck face, and they like every possible annoying thing from Marvel to DC, board games, anime, Asian girlfriend. Those are diagnosis things that are happening. And yes, you could just say gas chambers, you know, but that's a really wrong way, and that's very stubborn, because I think, again, to borrow the lose, it's like this desire thing. We desire, it's, you know, psychoanalytics, right? And what we really desire, it's the ideal of, maybe I could say, it's when Nietzsche talked about the Übermensch, and that the Übermensch was this futuristic gentleman, maybe in Christ-like an image, not to say, you know, him talking about the deaf and God and all, but Christ-like, I mean to say like someone who's good and thinks about the human soul and cares about others, willing to make martyrdom and sacrifice. And maybe this ideal that it's not so much you got to be a Chad and you got to lift weights all the time, and you got to be, because most kids can't do that, because when they do that, they kind of be like this taxi driver, Randy Stair serial killer. That's just not, it's against their nature.
It's inauthenticity is what it is. That, and that underlying inauthenticity, that divide between like the performative kind of aspect of how you're supposed to act and how you get rewarded societally for acting versus what's actually going on the inside and what you wish to express and actuate. You know, the bigger that gap, the bigger that chasm, you know, the harder it is sort of for someone to not snap in one way or another.
I had
the more incongruity in their life.
I thought it's not just about masculinity. I think any guy by birth is masculine biologically, so you don't have to have a mannerism for masculinity. I think the problem is this philosophy ideal maybe of that we get PTSD or traumas or some type of experience in life where most people do not know how to handle it. So they handle it in bizarre ways of acting like wearing a mask or role-playing, LARPing as someone, or drinking beer or smoking weed so they won't hear their father's verbal abuse, or they won't hear something that is traumatic in their life. And you start to realize that individuals or girls who use Tinder or dating websites, everyone mocks them as degenerate thoughts or something. You start to realize that these are average people under the spell of, again, these PTSDs, traumas, and they're hiding this image among trying to be the girl, like the slutty woman, or the guy who scores lots of women. Like, think about Roosh V. If Roosh V talks about having sex with over 100 different women, those are a lot of traumatic experiences, a lot of rape experiences. And so you have to think, you can't just say they're all poetically beautiful, like a romantic novel. And you have to say a lot of those just seems like a lot of body feeling and a body movement. And so I guess what I'm really saying is that it's not just the philosophy of trying to be a man, but it's something as we grow older, we grow post-traumatic stress disorder, traumas, ways we can't handle growing older, and chemistry in our body that makes us act certain ways. So we look to materialistic substances, and maybe something to do with death as well, that tries to make us conform, right? And the way I conform is like, yes, working out is a great substitute, but also well as eating healthy, Christianity, religion, saying you're gay, or saying these other things, which I think is very therapeutical. But again, I guess maybe as a digression here, it's also really bad to say, I'm gay and that makes me happy about myself, but that does that give you the right to have gay promiscuous sex or to target yourself to something you don't want to take responsibility to? And so that leads to a big, opening to say, a 20-year-old thinks he's gay and then has gay sex and then feels like he's been raped and makes him off worse, right? So again, I think it has a lot to do with growing up and experiences people have and able to control it. And I think Babs left. But
sorry, no. I just realized I was talking into a muted microphone. No, I was just saying that's very interesting. And here's an idea that I have, sort of, is that I think that...
Oh, you're talking into a muted microphone again. Oh, boy. I don't hear you, Babs.
Hello?
I can hear you now. You were off for a bit. You're muted.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right. I was just going to say that I feel like there were more archetypes for sort of different types of I guess what would be considered masculinity or male sort of like actuation.
There, in the sense of at least especially looking at the artistic and academic world, there was more diversity there. Maybe at some point in the past, although I might be wrong here and just idealizing, than there is today, where it feels like you can either be like this sort of urbanite soy bug boy, or you can be you can be like the meat-headed Chad or something like that. But really, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I feel like you see what I'm saying?
I have a friend, Alex, he came into the alt-right because he was like a Washington, D.C. wannabe lawyer, and he was all Republican, Jack Sobak and Coulter. And reading Countercurrents and Emran was just a natural way of saying, the Republicans, they don't understand about race, and I'm going to be with this group of race realists in the alt-right because they get it. And I think Richard Spencer comes from that same area as well, unlike Greg Johnson, which is from an academic background. And so there is that divide right there between those who are just Republicans moving on and just the interesting intellectual type who wants to be in it. But as for the issue of masculinity, I think it's okay to say that, like, if you're into like suit and tie Republican boy trying to be a politician, you're a demigod, and automatically I said this before, where it seems like Chads and Stacys run everything in society. Whether if you want to run if you want to be the leader of the gay pride parade, you have to be some straight cis Chad, which is ironic, because you would think the most belittled Columbine school shooter type would run it, who's sinister. But it turns out healthy individuals run organizations. And that brings up questions about eugenics and about who's healthy and people who get elected to winning jobs, right? Who wins the job interview? The guy that looks like Brad Pitt. And so that's an issue that nobody really brings up. But meanwhile, liberal academia thinks that's wrong. And yet liberal academia, I believe, they are run by these boomer whites or Gen X whites that look like Brad Pitt and then say all this stupid stuff about how much they hate white people and everything like that. So it's very strange. I think that's just a byproduct of capitalism and about this. You can't change the nature of the male. The downtrodden, school shooter fit into this. He doesn't. He's just considered a loser, a failure, right? And so he has all the right to be angry at Chad and Stacey society if he ever does get into a position of power. Kind of like Bill Gates is,
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. I'm curious. Yeah. I feel like there are going to be more and more of these loser types, in all sort of socioeconomic rungs of society, actually, as a matter of fact. And I think that we're going to be seeing more and more of people who don't fit into this situation.
I think the reason why is especially because millennials have been raised to believe that Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and MySpace is our gods, right? And that we also have FOMO, fear of missing out. And so our ideal of an idealized girlfriend is pictures we view online of other people who have those girls. It's very similar to what Roger Devlin said in Sexual Utopia and Power, when girls practice this incubus ideal of the boyfriend, where hypergamy states that they have to have this ideal boyfriend so they can make their other girlfriends jealous that they have the one and only incubus Fabio Donald Trump boyfriend. And I think guys, because of feminism, guys are becoming feminine and they're thinking the same way about their women. So when I don't want to say ugly, low sexual market value girl who's completely normative and looks like any other girl on this planet, proposes to a normal guy, the normal guy, because he read Roosh V or Aaron Clary, is going to reject her because, he's supposed to find a girl with big tits and a nice ass, a trophy wife. And so he throws away love in favor of this materialistic pursuit. And you're seeing this a lot with millennials today. And this is what Tinder does to your brain, and as well as dating apps. You feel like always when I'm dating, when you're dating some girl who might be a little chubby but has a great personality and what, you still have this thing in the back of your head. You can just roll the dice again and somehow get a Tinder girl, but have the same personality of dating right now. And that just shows you that we're obsessed with this Chad and Stacey archetype of being the very best. And the right is okay with this mentality, which in a way is just going to be self-destructive because
because the whole FOMO trading up thing is just another example of, free marketplace competition, domination of the most, assertive.
Class, sports cars, expensive colleges, and just it's the middle class trying to
sports itself is a perfect example of this type of competition. Sports
class trying to be the elite class by spending their money on things rather than accumulating money, like in Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki is like that, because the poor dad,
I can't believe you've read that. Yeah, that's an interesting book.
Poor dad spends all his money on liabilities, and the rich dad spends it on assets. That's going to accumulate more money. I know it's such a goofy reference. I was reading that a month about, class. I'm just interested in the whole class dynamic. And so it's unfortunate because the middle class is everyone else. It's not the poor. It's not the wealthy. Middle class is everything. And so what happens is that if the middle class is trying to act like the elites or aristocracy, and whatever the aristocracy wants is the Steven Universe Art School Wes Anderson hell, then the middle class will just try to get that by any means necessary by creating the blue-haired social justice warrior they just watched from She-Ra and Princess of Power, and then try to emulate the behavior, I guess. And that's ruining this ideal of having marriages, having authentic relationships, and it is really creating, I think, the millennial. I think if we're seeing boomers dying of alcoholism and suicide, expect half of millennials to die at age 30 or 35 because they were just taught by Gen X arts that somehow, all the pauseness going around, right? The kids that I think there's going to be this millennial thing. This might be a theory of mine, my best wishes, but I think what's going to happen is a lot of 30-year-old millennials are going to have, everyone's going to lose their virginity at 30 or 32 in the millennial generation, like the most smart ones, right? And everyone else who had sex when they were 18 are going to die by 30. I know, this is just a lucky guess.
I'm curious to hear, as someone who's in the age group kind of slightly above me, a true millennial, I believe, is a good way to describe yourself, whereas I'm sort of bordering millennial and Gen X.
I'd be like a 30-year-old boomer, I think. I'm not 30 years old, but I think I would fall into the 30. Have you seen 30-year-old boomer?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the concept. Okay, let's delineate between the different age brackets. What do you think of Zoomers versus millennials versus 30-year-old
I'm 26.
boomers?
I'm 26, and I'm not exactly a 30-year-old boomer yet, but I would fall into it. A 30-year-old boomer will say, like, Sega Genesis was the best system, and Limp Bizkit, 9 Inch Nails, right? And Grimdark. And a Zoomer who's like 20, 19 years old is going to be like Undertale, Asian Aryanism, Little Pump, using the iPad over Google Hangouts, right? He'll be on his phone and he has a fash cut, right? And I just think it's funny that the new boomer is somehow someone who's over mid-20s or something. And that just shows you it's really weird humor, but it tells you something about how much there's a divide between now technology and people jumping. But I don't know what else to say on it. I mean, what could I say? I mean to say this in the context of like, I have no idea if Zoomers are going to be like it's more like we're talking about Z, right? I don't know if Z is actually Zoomer. Z is probably only like 2 years old at the moment. But Z is probably going to grow up in an era where...
Yeah, when I say Zoomer, I mean everyone from my age and sort of downwards, as it were. Sort of like people 21, 22, and younger.
I would say Zoomer is even 18. I would go younger. Zoomer is really young. But I would say Z, particularly who's like 5 years old, I think Z is going to grow up. The Zoomer is going to be the new 30-year-old boomer, and then 30-year-old boomer will just be considered millennial. But I think the Z is going to grow up in an age that's so deracinated from millennial, Gen X, and boomer problems that they won't even know what anime is. They'll think video games is virtual reality. They'll think things are they'll think in terms of like colors where, United States of America is place of America things, right? Or English, that's for the English. They will not have a coherent history that's like a narrative has happened, right? Because millennials were supposed to obviously learn all this stuff, or even Gen X. I think
they'll have a completely barren metaphysic.
Exactly. Like I'm saying is generations are going to be becoming dumber, where things are just colors. Like that's red, that's blue. It's very binary, right? I mean, you already see this with like Harry Potter and Star Wars, where it's like good and evil. It's not just, an older generations would be able to tell us, it's not just good and evil. It's a philosophical battle and the conflict that's been, we won't see that with Z because Gen X or even millennials are not even raising Z to have any of these because millennial is so stuck up with being a snowflake SJW. It's Z will be. It's like I have no idea.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on the millennial generation just a bit more. Like you were talking about the sort of phone culture and the Instagram sort of type stuff. I mean, I think the millennial generation, 20, 30 years down the line, is going to be one of the most tragic and broken things that you could possibly see.
Well,
like, good God. After, I mean, there are all those studies where it's like, millennials are having less sex. It's like, well, frankly, that's not what I'm seeing. And like, coming from the perspective I'm in of like New York City, I think millennials are damaging themselves in just about every single way possible in many instances. Either that or they're just becoming drones and they're sort of like, just plugging into the system as it were. But the system doesn't care as much about them as I mean, I don't know. They're plugging into the system in the sense of like the system of like LinkedIn culture, but it's like they won't be having like a long-term job at one law firm or corporation generally.
I retweeted that on my Facebook, that Atlantic article about millennials having less sex. And in a way, I'm talking about Melvins, right? Melvins or Randy Stairs or like incels. They're the ones not getting less sex. And I'm arguing.
Oh, now I get it. Yeah, now I can see why that makes sense. Because from what I saw in New York City, it's like, who are these people who are not having sex? Like,
Stacy's getting that, right? We're talking about like, alpha, beta, the stupid MGTOW manosphere. Like, yeah, they're getting a lot of sex, but I said it's kind of like what the common average middle class person who does the right thing is considered a Melvin and an incel, whatever. The person who's indulging in this and trying to be a bro who looks like a movie actor is getting all this like stupid silver platter shit. And I've said before that I really dislike Chads and Stacy. So it's like, it's not just a whole, but I'm saying is like the good character is looking at like this promiscuous sex that's going on. The goodwill characters are just being revolted by it. But I will agree. I mean, that today there is too much of sex. Like you can get easily sex like a pizza delivery by getting some app and then finding.
Well, it depends on who you are, though. That's the thing. It really depends on who you are. Yeah,
actually be in power. For millennials, I mean, of course, I would be considered a millennial, and I remember 2006 when I was, I think, 14 or something. And at the time, everyone had MySpace. I had no idea what a MySpace was. Supposedly it was a personal website. And I quickly came to realize it was screen. And everybody would have a MySpace in the pre. And I even remember when I was 12, everyone had an AOL Instant Messenger. I remember I had like a middle school girlfriend who would want to talk to me on AOL when I came from school. But the point was that all of a sudden Facebook came around 2008, literally 10 years ago, and then everybody was on Facebook. And then by 2011, 2010, people started texting more often. It wasn't just like 90s stuff. It was literally a computer. And I first started texting around 2012. Then that texting, all of a sudden, everyone had an iPhone around 2013. And that was like coming to age of most millennials. And so, like movies like Home on the Eastern Front, or what's that movie? Like Great World War I, where everyone has, the entire silent generation is drafted to go fight in World War I, but they weren't ready for it, and they all died. And they all had this. That's a great tragedy with millennials. When millennials were all 18 and 20, most millennials got hooked on social media and texting and completely warped their sense of sexuality, their way of image, their psychosocial, like Eric Erickson ideal of life, and their goals and agendas, right? The next thought of things once upon a time, fairy tales. And I think millennials are now video games, or in terms of cream. Extreme hipsterdom is a good classification of millennials. Millennials think this is the final last generation and the ultimate generation to have fun. But the irony is that the middle class person, the incel or the Melvin, they're not getting that. or Oklahoma. The ones who are getting fun are in major cities like
New York. Yeah.
And they all are on mom and dad's Gen X or Boomer trust fund doing that, and the parents are consenting to this kind of they're okay with it because they wish they had that when they were young, which is ironic, speaking that the country was more white than it was 30 years prior. And so I will say a current theme right now among millennials is that most millennials who are 26, they have beards. They wear glasses because they were staring at their screen for too long. They had at least one Asian girlfriend. They were into anime, tried to learn Japanese, couldn't pick it up. They're into this weird electronic music that's kind of a mix between dubstep and rock music. They also think in terms of texting more often. It's kind of weird because like, the texting thing, that's only 5 years old. And this is what I'm saying is that millennials were completely innocent around 18, 19. It wasn't until this huge motherboard Nick Land transhumanism came in that tried to take over their minds, that Skynet that came in. And now I think millennials today are so isolated that we're seeing these school shootings happening every other month around white kids who are millennials. And this FOMO that's really happening is that our life only exists through Google Hangouts and Instagram. And the way we pick up girls is through sending girls Instagram messages through their profiles and then when we do meet in person, we're only meeting in person because we're consuming into something and we have to mind everyone's business. And it's unlike Gen X where you could go to a bar, meet someone, hook it up, and then all of a sudden that happens. That's gone. People do everything on the internet, and it's kind of becoming more like the Jetsons where we're on top of these towers and then go outside the towers into the seething masses below when we have the duty to do so because we got to pick something up on Craigslist or something. And that's also changing as well as commerce. But I think the main thing what makes millennials different is to classify all the girls now have tattoos. They have mental issues from having 12 sexual partners. Andrea Dorkin was right. The men are either Melville or it's incels who are just basically becoming more Asianized, and the Chads are basically they're not ready to take over, positions of power. Some of them won't even make good police officers. Some of them won't even be able to they'll just work in retail because everyone who is making society run is Gen X and boomers. The millennials who are running society are like Noelle Stevenson, who is some blue-haired, if you want to say typical feminist, who's showing art and representing millennials what the parents want to hear is the correct answer. I guess in other words, what I'm saying is millennials don't even have a voice yet. The only voice we have is the internet. And even using the internet, it's still not getting original voices because no one trusts anyone below the age of 35. But I will say, I will agree with you that millennials are even more decadent than Gen X, and it really harms the good Christian who wants to do good. I mean, I would put it in those terms because it's more advantageous today for a Christian girl or a Christian boy to say I'm completely the best, and then they keep secret the time they had sex with someone, and then say, what I'm saying is sin is everywhere today, and the biggest liar is the person who's inauthentic and not telling the truth. And today we have this obsession of calling out people who don't follow authenticity rather than anything. I don't know how to put it, but something like that.
People don't want to embrace their own hypocrisies.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the point of telling the truth was I'm very honest about my sex life. I'm incredibly honest about what I do, and I always think it's interesting to talk it with other individuals. But guess what? Most girls and guys don't want to hear it. Guys think it's gay if you talk about how you're good friends with guys. Girls think you are a cheater, and it seems like
exactly in the supposed age of openness.
Exactly, people are putting up a facade, and they're living this. Like, here's another thing. This sounds like a digression, but I think another reoccurring theme with millennials is that millennials are also deracinated from the Gen X boomer family is the home mentality, right? Gen X has this obsession with the family. And the family is this ideal that you live in a house in, you know, Maine or New Jersey, and this house is in this little Eisenhower box suburbs, and in the house you have a phony worship of Jesus Christ and pictures of the family everywhere over the house. Millennials hate that. And personally, I hate that too. That is a form of this kind of Fox boomer family is home materialism. And most millennials, they don't want to be reminded about the people before them or their purpose. Millennials are, you know, are being told, you know, not only being told, but feel like they have to make their own path in life. And so the bad parents, the bad Gen Xers are the ones that are not telling their kids to go to college and telling them to stay home in Bumfuckistan while they suffer at the will of the parents who's basically they're living in the house because the millennials are not even allowed to have work because all the Gen X and boomers have work. And so, you know, the millennials that are enjoying life are free from the family. They're free from helicopter parents, and they're free from this concept of boomerism. But the irony is that family is the home boomerism of this worship of the family, you know, got them to where they are, or that it's this ideal where boomers and Gen X, boomers and Gen X, and I think some of Gen X, they really want to believe this ideal of there's a mom, there's a dad, a brother and sister. I think millennials are the first to say individualism and only individualism to this extreme extent. I mean, you do see boomers who have this individualism, but we're talking about elitist boomers in their 60s who believe individualism. And this is pretty much in the upper class because they have, you know, so much money and they don't worry about anything. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that millennials get embarrassed when you talk about family because all the Gen Xers and some boomers were just, you know, they're disconnected from what millennials like. Some boomers don't even know what a computer program or electronic music is.
Like, what's the divorce rate for millennial parents? It's at least like 50% or something,
I know,
right?
yeah.
So,
Mine are. Most millennials, or at least not most, but I feel like a lot are.
Millennials don't even know how to have a relationship. They just know how to grub off each
other. I think it's a product of that, of coming from like shattered homes. It seems like, I mean, most people I've talked to have come from like divorce families.
Yeah, and they're gonna just think it's completely normal to be individuals, right? And I'm saying is like if you have a 50-year-old or 60-year-old parent who still like rocks in her chair making knits and has like pictures of the family everywhere. I mean, not to sound like a liberal, but that is very backwards and could damage the psychology of a millennial because they're living in a time capsule in 1960 America. And yet that is something what the conservatives and Republicans and PragerU wants to resurrect. And yet I don't think millennials want that. They don't want this. Like you see there's a lot of materialism, especially with the middle class, where they just hang pictures of their family all over the house. Like I'm talking about the psychology as well of Randy Stair. And if you look at Randy Stair's house, his room has wallpaper in it when he was 5 years old, and the family somehow has an obsession with the Dallas Cowboys, and he has a DVD copy of Home Alone in his room. That thing does not belong to him, but why is it in his room? Like in my room right now, my room is just completely white, and it looks like some kind of Ray Johnson art room where it looks like it's very Rothko blocks. And
that's where the rooms in just about every place that I've lived, aside from my room at my parents' house, has ended up looking like, just by virtue of, you know, what I just naturally was drawn towards. And I think a lot of other people within our rough age bracket will agree and relate.
Like I'm saying is like there's this I guess what my argument is, there's this high tradition from older generations to transmit the ideal of family and like the family shrine into millennials, but I believe millennials will not have it because I think
exactly I'm inclined to agree with you. Yeah,
I'm saying it's
it still happens at like the elite level. Like I've heard for like people within a certain income bracket, if it's high enough, still have very healthy family structures and shit. So I think it's mostly just going to cause the middle class to disintegrate. I mean, what's left of it will disintegrate.
Because the wealthy class hates the middle class, and the wealthy class wants to build the middle class. That's their plan. plan is to make every single white person an individual. You can't have family if it's all about individuals, because individuals will just take their bags and leave. And here's another thing. This is a feminist concept, but the ideal of a patriarch, meaning like a man, a masculine individual, gets to have the last say with his family, he gets to control his desires with his wife and what the kids are doing. And so the daughters and wife will leave because, well, he's being a patriarch. I might as well be a matriarch and an individual somewhere else. And so you just can't, you might hear this stupid, I extremely hate this. You probably came around New Jersey and hear about the Italian American, this bona fide white middle class ideal. Oh, we're real Italian, which means family, and that's bullshit. What it's really saying is you're a white nigger type of holds onto family values, this fake Christianity of doing sins and saying they don't even practice religion. And again, I just feel like, as a liberal myself, the lower class whites are the whites that hang on to family because they're not treating
sort of. Actually, no, families are even in a even worse shape in the lower classes of whites.
Yeah, I mean,
divorce rates are especially bad.
How would you know, Jew?
No, I come from a
words together. I know what
mid-range, I guess.
Yeah, the family structure because they have more. Not more kids. I mean, I know what you're saying. It's like this, the family structure because they don't have that much money. They have to rely on one another for something. When they're talking about the upper class, just think of Royal Tenenbaums. The Royal Tenenbaums that formed by Wes Anderson is a perfect example of what wealthy elites want to be. Everybody in the family has this interesting, eccentric personality. You're not oppressed by any patriarch. No one is telling you that you have obligations. The kids don't have parental anxiety. A lot of issue today with millennial incels and Melvins is that they have terrible helicopter parents. And helicopter parents are solely the issue of Gen X. I don't think millennials will become helicopter parents in 2050 or 2040. And they'll only become helicopter parents is because of some psychotic PTS or trauma disorder they have. The successful millennials today were able to kill their helicopter parent. Kill this materialistic 1950s boomerism of the family is a home, Johnny and Sarah, and family portraits everywhere in the house, and materialism that isn't there. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, what else? Maybe I'm just trying to say is that, I just think today is that millennials find it, completely revolting that they have any obligations to do with their mom or dad, because their dad is probably a dickhead, verbally abusive Chad, and their mom is a biologically dependent woman that just wants to think about nice things. And the successful millennials have parents who are pretty much liberal reading people who are artistic, and it just, maybe this is also a bell curve argument as well. But yeah, I don't know what to say on the matter. I think times are changing.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, just having some microphone issues. Oh wow, dude, Pilleater, you're dropping some, I think, great stuff on this show. I'm really looking forward to some.
I'm just afraid that somebody's going to point me out as some liberal or some like, oh, you're just a typical anti-white liberal who's talking. Because usually what the alt-right is saying, because I'm saying a complete argument that I haven't made a screencast about yet, and this has been in my mind. I feel like the alt-right is going to say to me like, ew, why do you hate the family? The family's tradition. But it's like, let's be real. What is the family? Do you want a verbally abusive dad who's a washed-up football player? Do you want a mom who's just there to make your bed every day and to, like, do everything for you? I thought the part...
Is that really the norm for intact families, though?
Well, we're talking about, like, middle-class families that are just out in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, or just, like, Kentucky, that have, like, no, like... They're not going to any major city.
Pencil-fucky.
Exactly. And this is what the alt-right worships. They worship this like middle class, like inbred white people, like big forehead, negrified radio listening to, while boomers are pretty much thinking it's 1950s America. The rite of passage for any adult or any kid, by the time they turn 18 or 20, you know, this is what colleges are becoming. Colleges for millennials are becoming materialistic rite of passages, meaning that you send their kids out of the state to some bumfuck college in Florida, and then they do whatever there to understand who they are. But the sad truth is, not only they're borrowing a loan to go to these schools, let alone get away debt-free, they go back to their same bumfuck place and they don't even find work there, right? And so it's like there is this really delusional thing with millennials now. Like, the great next World War I is sending your kids to college in the millennial age. Any bumfuck college, because, well, that's what you were told, especially in the reformist era of the 1980s with education. And yet, at the same time, these kids are just learning, like millennials are just learning that life is better if they had enough money, moved out of the house, and did their own thing. That's why if they did their own thing, they wouldn't have helicopter families. They would rely on what they're going to do and their own destiny, and we would create more of an artistic class. There would be no obligations for your mom to say what you have to. You wouldn't develop anxiety too, and personality issues. A lot of this anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder comes from the family, comes from mom, dad, and the overbearing brother. You cannot be an individual if you're a guy and you have a few older brothers. Why? Because you're not the oldest. You're not a patriarch. Or especially, the same could be said about in the women's psychology as well. If you're like a little sister or something, not you have to find yourself. But again, we're coming to a point in time where individuals cannot be individuals because we can't afford individuality. So now people are resorting to decadence and this like materialistic like consumption of it all. I don't know, but I just think this is I'm like, I see this right now with some people who are just like, I think it's nice to say that if you give a millennial a choice, would you rather have a happy life in debt doing these things or saving money and staying home at bumfuck parents? They would choose the first, because the second is just spiritual suicide and will lead to, again, homicidal, suicidal issues, what you've seen in Randy Stare.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I'm just sort of trying to process what you just said. All right. By the way, Snoot, if you're objecting to what Pilleater is saying right now, if you have a contrapoint that you'd like to make in the chat, I have no problem reading it, as well as feel free to jump on also.
Yeah, we're just beating a dead horse now about the family. All I'm just saying is that it's hard to.
Well, what would you like to advance as this is a critique, but what would you like to advance as an alternative model?
Well, I'm saying is I have an extreme disdain for anyone who like is materialistic and belongs in a place which isn't theirs. But the sad point is everyone's, especially all intellectual millennials, stay at home with their parents. It's just the natural occurrence of the economy right now. And Gen X and boomers don't understand that because, again, the problem with millennials, they're prisoners of their own parents. And so maybe I'm talking about a Freudian point where you do literally have to kill your parents to get your artistic views across.
Yeah. Oedipal.
Hasn't the rebellion against parents always been a feature of
yeah and as a matter of fact it's and like you can even look at the archetype of like having to, I mean, this comes up in fiction, and it's either surpassing or literally defeating your father, like
people are the ones that say they like their parents because they got their own life and they said, I wouldn't have an individual life if it wasn't for my mom and dad, so I'm going to put a falsified image that I like my parents.
Those to me seem like the healthiest people. Healthiest people I've seen are the ones who have good relationships with their parents.
But they only have good relations with their parents because the parents gave them their own freedom. They wouldn't say that about their parents if their parents.
No, I don't think freedom equals good parenting. Necessarily, I think
someone in the chat is saying the family is not an inherently materialist / bourgeois institution. But sorry, go ahead, Levi and Pilleater.
Oh no, that was it.
No, the family has become materialistic and bourgeois. It is like that. And people who say they like their dad or their mom, it's too hard to say that authentically in an age where parents are the enemy. They're most likely to become helicopters because we live in an age where millennials are decadent. And what I'm saying is it's okay to kill your family. Spiritually, not with a gun.
So, sorry, Levi, you were making a point. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh no, that was I made the whole point. It was just that yeah, this kind of struggle has always existed between like children and their parents, like it would seem to me.
I mean, yeah, it's just like
go ahead.
It's more like you don't. It's like maybe I'll add this in here too. The people who I said that they like their mom and dad, I've met are liars, straight up inauthentic people, and you probably have this ideal of this rainbow and flower image of your head that they do like their mom and dad, but they only like it in this way that their freedom, their personal individualistic way is getting across the court, right? Now, imagine what if they didn't have that and like they lived their life, but their mom and dad were always on their side, like some fox girlfriend or something. That's embarrassing. You wouldn't allow that. So really,
sort of. It's still better than the alternative.
Now, here's the thing. It's really hard to. It's hard to be like.
So I've seen both in action, and the kids who grow up with the alternative always end up unhealthier. You know.
Exactly. Like maybe it's like if you had parents who were more celebrities and artistic individuals, maybe I could understand the concept of liking your parents because they no longer become parents. They become celebrities that the world knows who they are.
Yeah, and I've seen that with people. I've seen people who are in those scenarios, and they actually look up to their parents, I think, in a much healthier sense than, let's say, I mean, don't hit too close to home, but let's say someone's father, is like a businessman or a lawyer or like or something like that, or they own like a medical practice. It's like it's really kind of a very different vibe there, especially if the younger person is like one of the more artistic free spirit type.
Because it's parents that change, that gives us PTSD and traumas. It's parents that make our life.
No, I would say life does, and parents are just kind of the vehicle for that necessary suffering.
I'm coming from like a Freudian point of view. Freud argues it's the parents are the like psychological traumas of our life because we're genetically related to them, and then when we learn their values, and then it's like this giant anchor we can't get across. Like the only reason why someone's gay is because he was raped when he was young or his dad was a fucking dickhead, right? And so it's hard to move on and go across that shell shock because it becomes more important. I am deeply sympathetic with liberals on this, is that, yeah, if you have a dickhead father, you should call it out and say your father fucking sucked. Like, and if you deny and say it's some kind of, it's just hard talk, maybe hard lie, complete lie, right out someone's mouth. And this is how inauthentic our society has truly become, because we can't even be honest about our parents because we're afraid to deconstruct our parents. This is what Wolfgang Iser said, that you can't deconstruct parents or religious idols because there's taboo around it. You can't, it's inauthentic, that will cause you a societal blame. But in all factual matter is, if you were a true individual, you would realize bad parents make bad upbringing, right? It's like Eminem dissing his own parents. I think Eminem dissing his own parents was pretty good because it shows you how fucked up he was basically his own parents. And people who say it's not their parents and they're fucked up, they're the liars themselves.
Interesting, yeah. Interesting. And wow, I mean, I have a lot to say. I'm also just now reading some of the comments in the chat. Interesting stuff. People are saying you're right. You're right that sorry, go ahead, sir.
What about girls that say daddy? They call their dad daddy. I don't know what this.
What do you think of that?
It's weird and sexual. It's very strange.
Not necessarily. I've seen it.
Well, I'm talking in a way where it's like, oh, thank you, Daddy, for buying me a car.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Daddy, for giving me a dorm room while 5 guys fuck with me every other night. Thank you, Daddy, for allowing me to have my own succubus sexual freedom. It's very strange and very weird. And, it makes me disgusted when other children call their parents by their first name. If my own daughter or my own son called me Francis, You're no longer talking about hierarchical orders and about relationships in the family. I'm somehow demoted to an individual that just so happens to be in your individual life. And this exactly has to do with the death of the family. And I think it's very popular among upper middle class people calling their parents by their first name. Personally, I don't like it. But the point of the matter is that it shows you that the death of the family is evident. It's there. The artist can't live until he becomes an individual with his own life, and the parents and nobody else dictates and oppresses life. You know, it is very different for men doing this, and it's very, but for women.
But have there ever been non-oppressive parents? I mean, that's kind of one of the main features of parenthood is.
Unless you're
creating like boundaries. You know?
Unless you were adopted or, you lived away from your parents. And like, that's kind of like me. Like, to me, my dad just doesn't.
You're basically saying like the default state of nature is.
Yeah, like
abnormal, which is.
Obviously, I have a mom, I have a dad, but I don't know my dad. It's just my dad is there. My dad never existed in my head. And when I do meet my dad, he's just a strange individual that had no relevance in my life. So you could say the reason why I'm partially gay or just have issues with my dad is because I never had a father figure in my life. And so if I did have like a nice like father figure in my life who gave me direction, maybe I would have, again, different outcomes about life and how happier I am. But again, that just shows you that, let's say, for instance, if you have an annoying helicopter mom, that's going to really damage you. And I think that is a crime in itself to have a helicopter mom, because the helicopter mom is basically damaging herself. She's not even letting her own kid off. She is literally oppressing her own son because she's getting a power trip on her. And I think it is disgusting when the alt-right tries to defend this nature and say, oh, helicopter moms are good. No, they're not. They create like this weird middle-class retardation of materialism, and they destroy the artist. Period. They destroy the art. It has nothing to do with Heideggerian authenticity. It's bourgeois mentality and materialism and stupidity.
Interesting. Snoot in the chat says calling your parents by their first name equals divorced parents. Yeah, I know. I agree. I think that's a good insight.
Everyone's doing that. I just get weird where, okay, the girl who goes, daddy, daddy this, daddy that, and you get the worried fuckboys, right? But then you have the girl that's like, oh, Tom, and it's her own father, and that's just weird because it's not only like that, you're adopted. It's more like you crossed him out in his life, and it's this devil that like rules over you or something. It's very strange. I mean, just think about all the parents that adopted Chinese girls from overseas.
Many, and I know many of those, especially in the sort of New York City.
There's like bloody punk rock girls who just like are kind of indifferent about white, but they just want nice.
Especially the Jewish families, like the upper class and the sort of lower upper class / upper class and upper middle class, like New York families, Jewish families who adopt like these Asian girls. Like those were always the biggest. Some of the more promiscuous, wild types.
To be honest, I'm a sucker for those types, and I like those types of girls because deep down inside, they just want a nice white boyfriend, and they want like a Christ-like husband to come in their life. But because of feminism and some bizarre Asian thing, it's really this. I don't know. It's very, but you could see an entire generation that adopts other kids from different countries out of this belief they're somehow going to be white. It's falsified because now we're seeing a trend, especially among like these weird Southeast or just Asian girls who are adopted, getting all these tats and trying to be white. It's like, are they just going to be this lesbian Amazonian army? Or by the time they're 30, are they going to find nice white boyfriends and create this Asian Aryan elite? I don't know. But it just shows you how fucked millennials are, even when you adopt someone outside the Western experience.
Yeah. Someone, hold on one second. Lucky Jim 1990 says, portrait of the artist as a young bitter millennial. Vegetable says to you, he had bad parents. Now he's projecting. Both father and mother should work in harmony. Anything.
I mean, and that's because everybody's going to be a parent because you're going to have kids. But like when you have kids, you enter an institution where you sacrifice some individualism to raise your own kids, whether that's 1 kid, 2 kids, or 3 kids.
Also leads to what are your thoughts on that?
And that's a responsibility, and but not everyone's trained and educated to do that. And so you're going to have to learn how to do that. I mean, as a parent, it's just something I think all animals have. However, I think in today's environment, again, everything has become materialistic, and it becomes a certain age when you get into habit that when you raise your kid, it literally becomes your, I mean, look at the lower classes. When they have like 5 or not 5 kids, like 2 or 3 kids, they brag to their other neighbors that they have kids, or they use their kids as their projection, especially shrewdish women in their 40s that now have like 2 kids, 3 kids. And they say, my only reason in life is taking care of a kid and not their own individual life. And I think that's a little fucking kooky among those women. It has to do with their shrewdness and not giving their own kids their individual space because they're jealous over their own youth, their kids' youth. And that leads to like ancestral kind of crazy.
Well, through children, you are immortal. You know, it's an extension of you.
And they get
jealous
over it, and they think it's them, right? And then they don't even give their kids a future option because they're too busy preening with their kid that that they have something. And so it's really weird. It's this kind of, again, I'm not telling you the best parental advice, but it's a trend I'm seeing where people just want to have kids just because, and they have kids, and it's just like, it's I don't know how really to explain it, but it's just,
it does feel like a lot of people have kids today, like it's almost like decoratively.
Exactly.
Yes, I do know that. Well, I do know what you're talking about. Although that still, again, doesn't really happen. I see it happening on Instagram, but that's more like suburban and other parts of America. Like even in New York City, people don't really do that so much. At least in my age group, or the one slightly above mine.
Yeah, millennials today, they're not going to have kids just to have kids. They're only going to have kids if they have money. That's going to be really different. Gen X was having kids just to have kids. Millennials are now, if you have a kid, you're fucked. But if you have the money, it's okay because you're willing to spend $1 million and 20 years of your life just to raise this kid so he can do something. And then even when the kid's 20, you got fear if he's going to be in a punk rock band and commit suicide or do something fucking crazy,
Yeah. People in the chat, people.
He went poopy.
Babs, we lost you.
Oh, well.
Hello.
There he is.
Hello. No, just the idea of a masculine role model, whether like indirect, like some like some exterior source, or one's literal father. Like, is this important? Because for me, like I never really had that. What I had is like a very like maternal centric upbringing, and I think that can make, and it involved a lot of sort of like reading and writing and artistic stuff and stuff like that, and going to like the cinema, going to what do you call it, like lots of plays, theater, ballet, going to Lincoln Center a lot, going to Museum Mile, which is right by where my parents live, all the time. Like it was taking lots of like academic courses, as opposed to, and I never really had like that, like any sort of father figure or father figure archetype. I'm curious, do you think that those things are needed? Like, and I mean, not whether they're needed, but like what can be done about this in the current age? Like, are there surrogate? Do there need to be surrogate figures?
I think I've been like basically beating a dead horse for about like 20 minutes about parental issues. I'm not even a parent myself, but I guess what if I wanted anything good from life is to reform the concept of being a father and a mother. I believe, if there's anything controversial, I believe in, is that I strongly believe there should be resurrect colleges for men and colleges for girls. I just don't think boys and girls should be in the same college, because if boys and girls are in the same university or college, it just means a lot of promiscuous sex and stupidity. And so if you created this elite aristocracy of just having like Haverford boys schools and Rosemont women's college, you raise them in a finishing school to be women and men to be men, and give them this new reformed like liberal New Yorker ideal to raise kids, then it's not going to be like this dickhead Chad Gen Xer who's going to have kids just because, or this dipsy bitch who's biologically dependent and is just an ex-slut who just wants to be a housewife because, materialism. And so if you have this like, I don't want to say Klingon
kind of like liberal elite where they know how to raise kids, then obviously we can have kids who are grown up in the right circumstance where they can be more advantageous to be artists and eccentric people. Because materialistic lower middle class kid normies, when normies have kids, they're going to have normie kids. When eccentrics and intellects have kids, they will have eccentrics and intellects. I would like to see the latter more happen, not just toll taker normies having toll taker kids. Maybe it's just a bell curve thing, but I would like to see that happen.
I think there are other traits beyond. This is kind of unrelated but semi-related. I'm curious, and I've been meaning to ask you for a while. Give me your thoughts on roaming millennial.
I don't know much about Lauren Chen, and I was interested in her when she came on Greg Johnson's show, and when Greg Johnson called her pretty, and I was just kind of confused why this model would try to talk anti-liberal conservative stuff. But my issue is she's just a model. She's just some Instagram model looking to get some views based upon her attractiveness. And that's what women do. Women, they don't use arguments or science or facts. They base everything on feelings and emotions and being a mother and being a good woman, right? And the best women in capitalism know how to whore. I mean, not as like a slut, but they know if you want my goods, you better do this for me. They know their place as a woman. Good women do that.
Yeah.
But also good women are also good moms and good partners, and we've definitely lost that. I'm not saying Lauren Chen is that, but Lauren Chen is just this kind of, yeah, she knows how to manipulate people, and she definitely has some backing and playing. But it just shows you that when you get certain women in the upper class and they have all this money, guess what? They're going to be these spoiled brat princesses, just like something like we saw in the Middle Ages or something like that, where it's just women in these positions that all the men want, but only the knights and kings can touch them, right? When men or intellects have this money and have access to the top, and they're not just chads, making more money, then the artist spends money to do interesting and eccentric things and changes the world. Like, it's a common belief that, liberals think somehow there's going to be that black kid in Philadelphia that if you gave him $1 million, he would do something interesting for the world, like Bill Cosby, right? This is the ideal behind Ian Jones, who made the show OKKO, whose girlfriend is the Jewish Rebecca Sugar in Steven Universe. This ideal, some fat black kid who writes anime is somehow going to be the next eccentric artist that will change all the art movement. But again, this is just nitpicking and trying to understand things in terms of, you're playing favorites, right? And so, again, it's really all about the individual and what you do with your money and, giving right. Maybe if I can say it's incentives or you give artists space because we don't have space for the artist anymore because you can't even afford to be an artist. And that's when people become anti-art, people become pro-Chad, and pro-Chad is being bad. And so for people like, I guess maybe what I'm saying is roaming millennials, just some plant. She's not really that relevant. She's just a girl in a position of power. Now, if you were to have some eccentric individual translating to all those people, then we could get this meta politics of being the artist across rather than this whole, confirm as a woman and give me beta bucks, Ugh.
There's one point. A lot of what you have to say is fascinating. Again, I mean, I could respond to a million different things. I want to say, you talk about the emotionality of women, and I'd say there are ways in which I think that men may be more emotional than women. This is something I've thought about for quite a while. Maybe I'm just projecting, and this is just me, sort of as like, kind of this wacky bipolar dude. But you see what, I think there are some instances where men can be very emotional as well. I think that it's just that women tend to have a care-harm instinct. That's their kind of emotional draw.
No, men are emotional when they create art and they do things, and it's a really powerful thing. Maybe I'm saying is women are emotional because it's not about what men like science and math and art and appreciation. Women only do these things because men are doing it. And the reason why you have girls that know about interesting things and art that you think only men would like is because they had a previous boyfriend that told them those things. women are basically more acceptable to the blank slate thing. Feminism,
okay, yeah, and I do sort of know what you're talking about now when you mention this stuff. I've even seen it firsthand.
Feminism says that women are supposedly blanks. No, feminism says that women are just like men. They just have vaginas, and you should treat them the same way. To me, no, they're not. They're biologically dependent, meaning that they're influenced by men. They can be individuals if they have men in their life that tell him to do so. Just like Percy Shelley's Hymn to Intellectual Beauty, where he says we should no longer love the beauty of the white Western woman for her big tits and nice ass. We should like her for her personality, and therefore try to gear women, as John Stuart Mill once said, to try to make them more like men. But this has been a total disaster. I disagree with them both, and has created a woman that's basically fucking annoying. I certainly don't want my woman to know about apocalypse culture or Boyd Rice or Adam Parfrey. That's a fucking bitch. Because it tells you that if women relate to you on a materialistic and personality level, you just create this carbon copy clone. Because most women, that's why women are innocent, is because you can program them to do anything and they'll fall for it, like a wind-up toy. And the scary part is feminism tries to indoctrinate the normative women to be some like eccentric postmodern Marxist. It's just not working because women just want to suck dick in the movie theater. They don't want to watch the movie. They want to suck the guy's dick in the theater watching the film. And then they'll learn the movie after sucking the guy's dick and swallowing his cum.
I think Levi just dropped out. Are you familiar with Orwell's Daughter, the YouTube channel?
Not really.
Yeah, you should check it out. It's interesting. It's called, her ideology is basically like white feminism. So it's basically like white women's feminism. It's very interesting. And I mean, another sort of variant idea, and this is more from an outsider rather than insider perspective, is your idea of what you called it, fifth wave feminism. I think that you had a very interesting, and you've sort of been making references to some of the concepts that you talked about there throughout tonight's discussion.
That was just done under pressure, and I was just like, for all of 2018, the theme was I record myself and say when I sway, like some avant-garde film. If I'm mad one day, I'll film myself. I don't care if I'm embarrassed by my past. I just want to film it. And that whole PragerU, I was just mad and upset at a PragerU video they did about this stupid blonde white woman talking about, oh, this is what women have to do. They have to be like, but what happens is, if you've seen the video, it'd be kind of like, okay, what's going to happen after fourth wave feminism when all the feminists are like done with their feminist SJW rant? It's not getting in men. So what they do is they follow men and be like, oh, men want to be all right. They want to be 1488 and white ethnostate. And that's going to happen. That's what Red Ice Radio wants. They want this kind of new white girl who's like, oh yeah, I'm different from all the other girls. It's like trad thought their religion. And that's fifth wave feminism, really. It's just women trying to gain the sexual of what men desire, right? Now, if men the next day, and this is true, so if all guys who go on Pornhub just to watch hang tie and jerk off to hang tie, then all the girls will be like, I think I should dress up as Asian and try to look like anime in my porn videos. And that happens. That shows you the power and persuasion of biological dependency among women, and shows you today how much of the image of the desire of how women will do anything, what men desire. So if we have a society full of anime geeks, all the women will look like anime. It just is.
And I do find that kind of chasing around or following around phenomenon very interesting. Like if you look at different kind of like geeky fandom cultures and stuff like that, of course there's a latency, there's like a little space between, but so just recently, like a lot of but I mean, it happened for everything. It happened for different gaming cultures, for like comic book culture, but it just seems like there's a little bit of a lag. You know what I mean? But I do find it funny though. And me personally, I've never really liked, I guess, outside of recently I've been watching some anime and reading some manga, but like I never really liked geek culture because I found it no different than the kind of like normie culture of like TV shows and stuff. And
white people trying to be authentic, that they actually read anime or manga or played games, but they like the images of it. And that's what the whole gamer bullshit is. There are some people who actually are, and the gamers are actually incels. They're nothing like, and people who preen and say they're a gamer are basically it's the equivalent of a hipster, but according to video games, anime, and manga. And it's sad when women say they're gamers because they pretty much had a boyfriend who said they were a gamer. And if they played Mega Man, Final Fantasy, ooh, how cutting edge you are, right?
Yeah, and then maybe more recently it'll be like, ooh, I play League of Legends or Overwatch or something along those lines.
Those people are despicable. I don't like them at all. I mean, there's some Asian Aryans in it, but
maybe I'll be Tracer.
I'm trying to yellow pill the gamers who do have Asian girlfriends, so it's whatever.
Can you talk a little bit about Asian Aryanism and the yellow pill for some of my audience who aren't familiar with the concept? I think it's absolutely fascinating, just simply because, a lot of times people espouse sort of radical fringe ideological movements that are very idealistic, that are very sort of far-fetched and far-flung. It's, it's a romantic vision of something that's far off from where things presently are. However, what you propose is actually, as a matter of fact, goes along perfectly with the grain of what I see in day-to-day life for both people of Hebrew descent and European descent in places like New York City, the United States of America.
I mean, just really quickly, Asian Aryanism was a concept I made in November 3rd, 2016. The philosophy is that with all the craziness and decadence going on, the only authentic true society will be white males, Asian females, or Asian males, white females, having a Eurasian offspring and having destiny with it. I'm thinking 3 steps ahead in the year 2060 when this will happen, because the only people who want to have nice normative families are white nerdy males and Asian females. We shouldn't be bashing them. The concept of yellow pill is when you try to tell the soy boy, self-destructive nihilist normie that when he's dating an Asian girl, he shouldn't just rape him like an Andrea Dworkin, essay, but instead settle with her, have some Eurasian children, and yellow pill that they do have a destiny. And so the word Asian Aryan is a little abrasive and very much kind of relates in shock art, especially normies get offended at the word Aryan. So I just say Eurasianism at this point, or Eurasianist. Anyone who, when you tell this to a white male Asian female that they have a future with Eurasian children, chances are they'll cuck out and they'll get upset. And I like that because it proves my point. It proves how inauthentic and bourgeois they are. And so I would like the people who are normies converted to what I'm saying. And so that's going to require, I had a website, asianarianism.com, and we published some blog posts, but then I just made a Pilleater.com and I released a book that had all the articles in there entitled A Manifesto About Stalking Patrick Hyland. And I continue to write more about the Eurasianist point of view once I get other thoughts in my head and onto YouTube and other spheres of influences, because I just don't want to be called the Andrew Anglin Asian fetishist dude. That's not who I am. I'm more than that. And so I think anybody can be a Eurasianist so as long as they have the ideals and philosophy to go along with it. It's not just the novelty of, oh, he's a hater. In fact, I want this ideal to infiltrate all liberal schools of thinking, and it'll just be something that will be confronted with the huge Eurasian mass that will happen in 2060.
Yeah. I mean, an Asian Aryanism, Asian Aryanist, kind of implicit Asian Aryanism will kind of have a hold on the societal dialectic from quote unquote right to quote unquote left, at least within sort of normie society, I think within America and Canada and I believe Australia as well, increasingly so.
Oh yeah, it's just going to happen. I mean, video games, anime, the fetishization of Japanese women, but instead they marry Chinese women. It's just going to happen. It's just going to, the music, Asian influence swept them. Again, it's just you're lying to yourself if you don't say it's not going to happen. Otherwise, we're just going to create an entire punk rock culture of Asian women who've been raped by nerdy white men that are going to revolt in 20 years.
What you have some people in the chat making the somewhat hackneyed talking point. What is it? Levi said, Happas are usually mentally ill. John Harris said, lol, true. But then, Quid-As Veritas says, usually mentally ill. Sounds very scientific. Elliot Roger. I'm curious to hear. I see that critique a lot. I find it rather hackneyed. I find it to not hold that much weight. But what are your thoughts on things like that? I don't think that they necessarily have that problem more than any other mixed group necessarily has problems. Right. And I do think that there is sort of unless there's like a good way where the identity is sort of synergized well, I think Mexicans seem to do a rather good job of synergizing like the Iberian and the sort of like Aztec/Mayan thing pretty well. But I feel like the, what do you call it? I feel like
Well,
like even Jews even have struggle with the fact of like being part Middle Eastern, part European, like that whole duality. It can lead to stuff, but I don't think that Asian Aryans, as it were, are uniquely susceptible to this. Would you say that they are?
Well, you just pointed out a terrific point, and if people continue saying that all Happas are mentally ill, well, that'll just point a movement that, okay, since any Eurasian born is mentally ill, they'll just express it in punk rock music full of post-traumatic stress disorder and trauma, which is already done by the work of Jim Goad and others, and exactly why the hell are you in the alt-right? And this intersects with why I talk about queerness. And so all these arguments that people say about mental, oh, it just won't work, I have other arguments to back it up with. And I'm willing to say that it's just more than the condition. It's to do with arts and the futuristic outcome. It's all about thinking about 3 steps ahead, 50 years advance instead of 5 years in advance. You know, people who only care about stupid things only can think about a month in advance. And smart people, you know, good people, they can think 5 years in advance. But really smart people can think about things 50 years in advance. And so, I mean, really to say is that, again, I will defend the claim that there are a lot of millennials having Asian wives or Asian guys with white wives happening, and they will have some Eurasian offspring. Whether they have some crazy consequences or not, and society becomes more decadent, I don't know. But I'm trying to contain that and trying to make sense of it all and trying to have a bright future for it.
What does an Asian Aryanist future look like to you? Some potential projections?
I once said Vancouver or Singapore or just a dirty NYC, but there's more Asian influenced style Blade Runner stuff happening around, or maybe Chinatown neo-Nazi lands is a particular example. I used to say more art galleries, punk rock concert, vegan restaurants, and flea markets or whatnot, but more of a term of
Japanese breakfast is performing at Brooklyn Steel pretty soon coming up. I might go see that.
Well, I'm seeing her on New Year's Eve, and she's a Korean Jew. I know that. Well, no, yeah, she's a Korean Jew actually, but yeah, I got tickets for that for New Year's Eve. I'll go on that, but I don't know. It isn't. Wait, that's in January, right?
Yeah, I think that mine might not be the New Year's Eve.
I got my one ticket because supposedly she went to Haverford, and I went to Rosemont, so she was only a walking distance from where I went to school from, and I don't know what to make of it. I'll see her on New Year's Eve and film it. I have no idea, but I don't know. Yeah, things like that fascinate me. That's why I'm always doing it. Art, whatever.
What do you think future class relations look like?
I think
future class relationships look like?
Yeah, because my prediction is sort of like, I guess, something along the lines of Elysium, except more atomized and more restrictions. Effectively, there's less freedom. You know, Elysium is even something of kind of like a libertarian paradise, but it's like, no, it's like very unfree, hyper atomized, hyper like under the boot of basically mega corporate capitalism. And it's just like, and then there's like the tiny little elite, basically. And there may or may not be a UBI. I'm not sure. Or another version is like people sealed in their little pleasure pods, you know, with their VR headsets and hooked up to like a Soylent drip. But I'm curious to hear what your potential thoughts of the future of class are in the world and America.
The boomers will die. All the boomers would be dead, so nobody has to put a myth that the Nazis were evil. The new boomer class, however, might be Gen X and might have some boomer values, but millennials, when they become boomers, will kind of be just full of soy boys who believe everything is individualistic, that it's all about consuming and having fun. You shouldn't judge people's character by their race. And they have no ideal of life ahead because, well, they only lived for themselves. And so they're basically ignorant nihilists. Their children, however, will have a sense of identity and will fight for it, but they will create their identity out of this. They thought they were not about identity, but then they accidentally created this identity. And that's exactly what some of the race mixing millennials are doing. They think they're doing it out of this pretentious ideal that race doesn't matter, but they actually will be creating a race of people, kind of like mestizos or something, and they have full responsibility of that. But when you tell them in person that they are responsible for it, they said, I have nothing to do with this. And so obviously we'll have a stupid class of basically this old school consumer anime watching class faced with real world adult responsibilities they're not ready to handle. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about the issue, but
I mean, do you think that UBI will be instituted at some point? Do you think something like that would be helpful? Do you think that there are going to be people who effectively just become sort of like professional hobbyists, professional hobbyist NEETs?
Oh, no, there's Andrew Yang who wants a universal basic income, and he's a Chinese American who wants to run for president, for Democrat. And if if a Chinese man runs for president, that'll just shows you our Asianized America of basic universal income, of our president's Chinese. I love how it'll downplay black and Negro culture, no more trap music. All alternative white indie will become Eurobeat and Asianized. That's kind of another reoccurring thing of Asianarianism, is that it downplays black culture. That's the hilarious part. And that's why white people like Asianarianism, is because they don't have to they don't have to deal with black people. Blacks try to be Afro-Asian, but most Asians don't like them, and Afro-Asians are very, very small. So Asianarianism is a reaction against, I don't want to be a part of the white-black divide. I just want it to be white and Asians. If we have more Eurasians will find black music completely alien and will not associate them. Like some in the alt-right argue that, no, this is the clarity plan. You'll have Eurasians having sex with blacks, and it'll create a Eurasian clarity kid. Not true. Eurasians will always be Eurasians and will prefer whites and Asians together, and then they will discriminate seeing black music because it's completely not white, not Asian, it's black, and it's self-destructive and primitive and African, and we don't want to be anything around it. So you'll have a Eurasian middle class and upper class, and all blacks will just be lower class, or just the primitive class, while they are observed in this kind of fish tank of Baltimore or something.
There are some critiques in the chat, some pretty hard pushback just recently. If you want to gloss over any of those comments and respond to any of them, and I think it might be, I'm interested to see. Yeah, I mean, they're nothing too harsh. They're just like have some questions about your future plans.
There's a lot to say. I will be honest with you. I'm kind of tired at the moment, and I was just about, I kind of got to go at them bit.
So, that's fine. Yeah, don't worry about it.
I want to continue this chat because I kind of came on not knowing what to expect, and Brundle came on, and your friends, and then I was just talking about family in an incoherent reason without any. And if we're talking about Asianarianism, I guess we should have a single episode for it because there's just
that's fine. You're right. I don't want to steer this conversation anywhere you don't want.
No,
would you like to wrap this up in any particular way? Yeah, like bring this into a close with any specific topic?
I'll just wrap it up saying I'll be prepared tomorrow because there'll be the Stark Truth podcast on Stark Truth TV, and I'm willing to talk on that channel. Just to what Matt wants to talk about Deleuze. And so I'm actually trying to finish up another PowerPoint and carry my thoughts about Randy Stair, because again, if we're like, just talking about family issues, I was just spitting out ideals and what I'm just thinking. So if people disagree with me in the chat, well, I'm just basically having a flow of consciousness like most rappers do, But I want to say something coherent. I don't mean to say like, black people suck. I don't mean to be anything like that. So I'm trying to say things in the best coherent way possible. And so if we're talking about Eurasianism, I should be at least ready when I'm in a brighter mood.
All right.
But I haven't.
That's fair. I like the freeform style. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And where can we follow you? The Spinning Top Club, as well as your Pilleater page.
The Spinning Top Club is the live stream channel, and you can just Google search that. But if you just go www.youtube.com/Pilleater, it's okay with me because I've been trying to do daily PowerPoint slides. And again, just youtube.com/Pilleater. Just subscribe there. I have a website, www.pilleater.com, but it's all under construction. But you could find all my activity on YouTube.
All right, excellent. Any last words, or are you out for the night?
No, I'm out for the night. I'll talk to you later.
Awesome. Okay? Thanks for joining. Good to hear from you. Take care. Have a nice night, everyone.